পতন অভ্যুদয় বন্ধুর পন্থা যুগ যুগ ধাবিত যাত্রী হে চির সারথি তব রথ চক্রে মুখরিত পথ দিন রাত্রি দারুণ বিপ্লব মাঝে তব শঙ্খ ধ্বনি বাজে সংকট দুঃখ ত্রাতা.
So, on behalf of Gitika Trust, I welcome you to this evening's lecture. As you would be aware, we are a trust engaged in research and dissemination of scholarship on social, economic, health, and cultural issues. We also aim in inculcating research culture in our society. This evening, it is duly our pleasure to welcome and introduce a young researcher, Rebanta Gupta, who is currently working as a research assistant at Maulana Abul Kalam Azad Institute of Asian Studies, Kolkata, an autonomous research institute under the Ministry of Culture, Government of India. He received his undergraduate and postgraduate degrees in English from Ashutosh College, University of Calcutta, and Presidency University, Kolkata, respectively. His research interests encompass literary theory, 20th and 21st century fiction, ethnomusicology, film studies, cultural studies, and the cultural and intellectual histories of urban spaces. He has published research articles on the aforementioned areas and presented papers at eminent institutions. It's a great pleasure to invite you, sir, to present a special lecture for us. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Verma, for this kind introduction. And I want to thank Gitika Trust for inviting me to deliver this lecture for today's session. Initially, I was thinking that a number of eminent scholars and thinkers have presented, have been a part of this intellectual discourse, and I'm practically no one in front of them. But I want to thank Dr. Chaudhary and the team of Gitika Trust for having some kind of faith, though we are meeting for the first time, but having some kind of faith in me and inviting me to deliver this lecture. So the title of my lecture for today's session is Eulogizing the Mother, Eulogizing the Nation as the Mother, a comparative study of Jana, Gana, Mana and Sukh. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to juxtapose two very famous songs. One of them is, of course, Jana Gana Mana, as we know, the national anthem of India, written by Rabindranath Tagore, and the other song being Subh, written by Colonel Abid Hassan Safrani and Mumtaz Hussain of the Provisional Government of Azad Hind, or the Arzi Hukumat-e-Azad Hind, established by Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose on 21st of October 1943 in Singapore. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to make a comparative study between these two songs and try to point out what are the parallels, what are the shifts that have been observed when we compare these two texts by placing them side by side, and what are the points of convergence and divergence that we can find out by engaging in a critical hermeneutical study of these two texts. So this is the title of my lecture, Eulogizing the Nation as the Mother, a comparative study of Jana Gana Mana and Subh. Can you see the whole screen, or is it like split in half or something like that?
This is very visible. Thank you.
Okay. So let me begin. Music has always been an integral tool to celebrate and disseminate the ideas of nationalism. And the Indian independence movement witnessed the emergence of a gamut of songs celebrating the glory of Mother India. And it preached resistance against colonial oppressors. With the coalescence of different groups, communities, and kingdoms in the post-Great Revolt 1857 phase, which has been called the first war of independence, of Indian independence by Vinayak Damodar Savarkar, a sense of united India gradually surfaced with the crystallization of the concept of political nationalism. Music has always played an active part in Indian life, the folk and the classical branches of music becoming the dominant forms across the country. But music was soon molded into an artistic medium to propagate nationalism and inculcate a sense of unity among people, cutting across diverse regional, political, social, and cultural affiliations. And that went on to generate a national oral imagination. Each Indian region had its own repertoire of traditional songs, but these had to be balanced with larger all India projects, especially when it came to the recasting of larger classical traditions. The act of constructing and even reinventing a modern tradition of Indian classical music bore the marks of nationalist concerns, ranging from the ideas of textual authenticity to compositions that celebrated the nation and to iterations of shared spiritual associations. India represents a giant assemblage of diverse cultures with conflicting and contradictory modalities. But the idea of the nation was gradually constructed through a process of complex negotiations, which was colored by the ideas of the dominant Hindu culture, by and large. Artists hailing from diverse backgrounds collaborated to produce a number of songs that kept the nationalist aspirations and the desire of liberation from the colonial clutches simmering in the minds of the listeners. Moreover, the idea of a national music came to be an experiential reality with the integration of popular compositions, with the staging of devotional songs, and in the popularization of certain melodies which were easy to recall, respond to, and to even hum. In most of these cases, these songs would be addressed to the nation, projected like a beloved mother, whose body has been invaded by colonial people, and the onus now lies on her children to salvage her modesty. The image of Mother India or Bharat Mata therefore surfaced from the literary endeavors of eminent men of letters, most notably from the writings of Bankim Chandra Chatterjee, whose seminal novel Anandamot first conceptualized this image as the national personification of India. Though I have mentioned that Bankim Chandra was the first person, he was the first person whose writings gave a very crystallized format of Bharat Mata, though we can find traces of this image of Bharat Mata in earlier writings as well, most notably in Derosio's very famous poem, To India, My Native Land, we can find some traces of this idea of Bharat Mata. It's not very explicitly present, but it's there. The novel Anandamot, set against the backdrop of the Sonnashi rebellion of 1770s, frames the song Vande Mataram, meaning I praise to thee, mother. It is an ode to the motherland, who is fashioned like a Hindu goddess. And the descriptions of the natural and cultural splendors of India in this song merges with the iconography of the mother. In Sri Aurobindo's translation, it becomes like this: rich with thy hurrying streams, bright with thy orchard glens, cool with the wind of delight, dark fields waving, mother of might. Interpreted as a response to the British anthem God Save the Queen, Vande Mataram was first sung at the 1896 session of the Indian National Congress, and later Rabindranath Tagore set it to tune and himself sung it on the opening day of this session. The song gained traction during the Indian independence movement, and though Anandamot was subsequently banned and the recital of the song in public was criminalized, students, workers, and the general public often violated the government order and invited arrests by singing it. Historian Ramesh Chandra Majumdar describes the monumental effect the song had on the revolutionaries. He writes, During the long and arduous struggle for freedom from 1905 to 1947, Vande Mataram was the rallying cry of the patriotic sons of India, and thousands of them succumbed to the lathi blow of the British police or mounted the scaffold with Vande Mataram on their lips. The catch line of the song emerged as a pan-Indian signifier for revolution. And despite the looming presence of Hindu iconography of the text, it became really popular among the Indian masses. But I have to say this, when I say Indian masses, it was mainly popular, it became popular mainly among the Hindus. But it was not accepted to a great extent by the Muslims. The Muslims often felt that the reference to the Hindu goddesses in this song, Durga, Lokhi, and Saraswati, these are more than goddesses, they are attributes, they are qualities that have defined India. I do not consider them to be goddess symbol, but they are mainly qualities. But the Muslims who believed in the principle of Tawheed, that is the oneness of God, were reluctant to accept Vande Mataram as their own song alongside the Hindus because they thought that this violates the principle of oneness of God, the monotheistic principle, and this promotes idolatry and polytheism, which they were not ready to accept. So an escape route had to be devised. We had to have a pan-Indian song which would capture the spirit of India, which would perhaps, in a very compromised way, create a very sanitized clinical version of Indian nationalism and capture the spirit in that way, which would not offend any community. And out of that consciousness, Jana Gana Mana and Subh Sukh emerged, which was finally accepted by both the Hindus and the Muslims. So let me talk very briefly about the history of Jana Gana Mana and Subh Sukh after that. The Indian polymath Rabindranath Tagore, widely regarded as one of the greatest poets of Bengali literature and the recipient of the Nobel Prize in Literature, is still celebrated among the Bengalis and Indians for Rabindra Songit, or the eclectic repertoire of songs that he designed by deriving elements from a number of sources, mainly Hindustani and Carnatic classical music, folk songs from Bengal, and from other Indian regions, Western classical music, Irish melodies, to name a few. His songs, more than 2,000 in number, encompass diverse themes like romanticism, psychology, seasons, nostalgia, and most importantly, nationalism. Along with his contemporaries like Atul Prasad Sen, Bijendralal Rai, Rajanikant Sen, and Kazi Nazrul Islam, Rabindranath became one of the most important fountainheads of nationalistic songs during the Indian independence movement. Gitobitan, the compendium of Tagore's songs, records almost 46 songs, more or less, under the section Swadeshi, that is, the songs dedicated to the nation, each one dealing with the theme of the glory and the unsurpassed beauty of the Indian nation, and it gives call to the Indians to unshackle their motherland from the colonial regime, from the colonial clutches. Jana Gana Mana, which falls under this Swadeshi section of Gitobitan, which was later adopted as the national anthem of the Republic of India, was originally written as a poem titled Bharato Bhagya Vidhata, or the dispenser of India's destiny, if we follow the English translation of the song called the Morning Song of India, written around 1911, written in highly literary form of Bengali, or a very Sanskritized version of Bengali. The song reflects the history, traditions, and the composite culture of India. It has been serving as an expression of national identity since its adoption. Originally written as a hymn, the song, known for celebrating the socio-cultural plurality of India, was first sung by Tagore on the second day of the Indian National Congress's annual session in Calcutta on 27th of December 1911. It is dedicated to a transcendental supreme figure or the dispenser of India's destiny. I am not using the word God very consciously. I'm using the word transcendental figure. Though some crass arguments have been made that the song was originally written in praise of King George V, who was then the British monarch, but these are nothing but balderdaches. It was later translated into English as the Morning Song of India by Tagore himself, and it was set to tune by Margaret Cousins, the wife of the Irish poet James H. Cousins, the then principal of the Besant Theosophical College at Madanpalli in Andhra Pradesh, where Tagore was enjoying his holidays in 1919. The Constituent Assembly of Independent India adopted only the first stanza of Bharata Bhagya as the national anthem of the Republic of India on 24th of January 1950. But prior to that, the first Prime Minister of independent India, Jawaharlal Nehru, sought the advice of the musician Herbert Muriel about the anthem, and Muriel felt that it was a bit slow. So he increased the tempo and modeled it on the lines of the French national song, La Marseillaise. And the formal rendition of this song, the official version of this song, that the first stanza, takes around 52 seconds approximately. And let us briefly look at the history of Subh Sukh, and then we will move forward and analyze the parallels and the differences. Subh Sukh, which means auspicious happiness in English, emerged, auspicious and happiness, a kind of a very loaded word, emerged as the national anthem of the Provisional Government of Free India, of the Arzi Hukumat-e-Azad Hind, established by the Indian nationalist leader Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose in Japanese-occupied Singapore on 21st of October 1943. Bose, who was a proponent of armed struggle to uproot British hegemony from India, who found Mahatma Gandhi's policy of non-violent mass movement against the British Raj deeply problematic and inappropriate for that moment, sought assistance from Axis powers of the Second World War, like Nazi Germany and Japan, in order to mobilize a militia known as the Indian National Army or the Azad Hind Fauj, composed of members of the Indian diaspora in Southeast Asia. Modeled on Tagore's Jana Gana Mana, Subh Sukh was written by an INA personnel, Colonel Abid Hassan Safrani. Safrani is a sobriquet, in association with Mumtaz Hussain. And this was done under Bose's instructions. Also known as Kwame Tarana, it was set to music by Captain Ram Singh Thakur. Though Vande Mataram could have been a better candidate, it was eventually discarded for its Hindu metaphors. I have already mentioned this. The Muslims and other communities were not really happy with the Hindu metaphors. And I will address this issue towards the concluding part of my lecture. And Jana Gana Mana was deemed more appropriate for this. Because why Jana Gana Mana was deemed more appropriate? Because it did not explicitly refer to any Hindu metaphor. It offered an open architecture, which you cannot, boil it down to any particular religious or cultural symbol. It opens up a large interpretive domain for the people. However, to avoid its Sanskritized Bengali, Bose instructed Hassan to prepare a simple Hindustani translation of the song. Running for a length of 3 stanzas, Subh Sukh incorporates a martial tune which intersects with the spirit of INA waging war against the British Raj and the Allied powers. However, the devotion and patriotism that it exudes is unignorable. Though it is sometimes considered as an Urdu version of Jana Gana Mana, the two texts differ to some extent, and Subh Sukh could be best described as an inspired transcreation of Tagore's song. And after the independence of India in August 1947, Sukh unfortunately took a backseat as Jana Gana Mana was taken up as the national anthem for India. Nevertheless, Captain Thakur was invited to play this tune with his orchestra group on 16th of August 1947 when Nehru was unfurling the Indian tricolour at the Red Fort. The song continues to be popular in India and has been reproduced in some Indian films and web series focusing on Bose's life, such as Rangoon, Bose Dead or Alive, and Gumnami, to name a few. So this is a juxtaposition chart where I have outlined the basic points about these two songs. I have met certain heads, authors, composers, language, year of composition, usage, structure, and dedication. And in this juxtaposition chart, if you look at this, you will find how these two songs differ from each other. Like, for example, the language, there's a difference in language, and I will talk about that in a while. Even the structure that was adopted, like if you look at Jana Gana Mana, it runs for nearly 5 stanzas, while Subh runs for 3 stanzas, and even the dedication, the addressee to whom these songs have been addressed, they also differ to some extent, and I will discuss them. So first, let us talk about the shift in language. And what do I mean by that? What shift in language that I'm talking about? Jana Gana Mana was written in a literary form of Bengali, which is loaded with a Sanskritic sentiment or a Sanskritic essence that it exudes. The linguistic complexity of this song, along with its philosophical density, threatened its alienation from the larger audience of India, who could not always comprehend the nuances of a well-crafted literary work. This accusation has been made against Rabindranath by many, that Rabindranath is very complex to understand, while Sharat Chandra is more accessible. Well, I don't know who is right. I mean, Rabindranath and Sharat Chandra had different sentiments about language and different approaches. So I'm not going to comment on that, but many people think in this way. Though Bengali happens to be the 7th most spoken language in the world, with around 229 million native speakers globally, I'm talking about today, it ranks behind other Indian languages, especially Hindi, which has a larger base of native speakers, which is around 342 million native speakers as of 2021. And that kind of diminishes the chances of any literary or musical work produced in Bengali to get a wide readership. Though orally, in terms of sound, in terms of music, it might be more accessible to the masses than from the linguistic perspective. The Constituent Assembly of India had supposedly selected only the first stanza of Jana Gana Mana as the national anthem, not only because of the representation of the cultural plurality and the geographical diversity that we can find in the first stanza of the song, but also perhaps also for the lesser linguistic complexity it displays, because this complexity exponentially increases as one proceeds to the remaining stanzas. And I was listening to one version of the complete Jana Gana Mana. It was sung by some non-Bengali artist, and believe me, it was horrible because they could not pronounce the words correctly. And that kind of damages the spirit of the song, I think. No disrespect to anyone, but I think it damages if you cannot grasp the language properly. And it is not possible for everyone to grasp Bengali language because this particular diction that you have to be familiar with. So it kind of damages the essence of the song to a great extent if you cannot speak Bengali properly. Therefore, the entire song, if taken into consideration, suffers from some kind of parochialism, since only the educated Bengali intelligentsia could critically engage with it and appreciate it. Even with Bankim Chandra Chatterjee's Vande Mataram, which has secured its place as the national song of India, the same problem persists, because it has also been written in a very Sanskritized version of Bengali. Moreover, the metaphors of the Hindu culture that it deployed might have also alienated the Muslim revolutionaries of India, who would not have accepted a very monolithic and Hindu-centric view of Indian culture that this song upholds. So an ingenious solution to this linguistic problem was delivered by Hassan Subh. The provisional government of Azad Hind, along with its military wing, the Indian National Army, comprised people hailing from different religious and linguistic backgrounds. Subhash Chandra Bose was a Bengali-speaking Hindu. Colonel Abid Hassan and Colonel Habibur Rahman were Urdu-speaking Muslims. Captain Ram Singh Thakur was a Gurkha. And to negotiate these cultural differences and to avoid any Hindu-centric view of India, which might have antagonized the non-Hindu personnel of Azad Hind, Bose instructed Hassan to write the song in the Hindustani language. I must mention over here, Bose was unapologetically a Hindu. He was very proud of the civilizational culture of India. But it was, as I have already mentioned, it was an attempt at creating a larger space, an open architecture, by creating a song which would be accepted by all. He was not going to compromise with his own Hindu credentials, with his own Hindu identity. But here, he is choosing the Hindustani language instead of a Sanskritized Bengali so that it could be accessed by people from all communities. Though Tagore's Jana Gana Mana remained as the launchpad for Subh, Hassan's song, which was written in Hindustani, became more of a free translation of the former and attained a separate aesthetic life of its own. Hindustani is a lingua franca of northern India and Pakistan, which encapsulates the linguistic essence of both Hindi and Urdu. And it was widely promoted by the British, who initiated an effort at standardization. The Britishers would instruct their officers in Hindustani, and the standardization of the language witnessed an influx of Sanskrit, Persian, and Arabic words used by the Hindus and the Muslims. The composition of Subh in Hindustani, therefore, made the song universally acceptable to all religious, cultural, and linguistic sections of Azad Hind, as this language was more colloquial and accessible than esoteric and appealed to universal sensibilities. Hindustani language catapulted the song from the realm of the local to the universal, from esoteric to the public, and the simplicity of imagery and the terseness of language helped to ignite a pan-Indian sentiment about the mission of Azad Hind against the colonizers. Now, there are some thoughts on melody, the melodic component of this song, of these two songs. Both Jana Gana Mana and Subh are colored with the spirit of ardent patriotism and nationalism, but the melodies of the two songs interpret these themes in two different manners. Jana Gana Mana applies the regimen of Hindustani classical ragas to form its melodic structure. But there have been debates about the identity of the ragas that have been used in composing the tune. Both Jana Gana Mana and Subh share a common melodic core. They're more or less similar, but there are very subtle differences. And it also depends on the version of the song that you're listening to, because Jana Gana Mana more or less has remained the same, but Subh exists in one or two versions. And I will talk about one version in a while. So there are subtle differences. I'm not going to talk about those very subtle differences, but if you listen to the YouTube recordings, recordings are available on YouTube. There are differences in the structure, in the melodic lines. And the most important point is that what raga has been used. And there are several candidates, Yaman, Gorsarang, Alhaya Bilaval, and I mean, I was confused. Which raga has been? I found that one book has written it's Yaman, while the other places are saying it's Gaur Sarang and Alhaya Bilawal. But I was unable to boil it down to one raga, to pin one raga down, to find out what was the melodic core, what formed the melodic core of the song. So one of my very dear friends, Shubhabra Kullan Rana, who is a musician, a wonderful young tabla player and the vocalist, he told me that, see, this song kind of floats. He's a musician, so his knowledge of music is way better than what I have. So he said that, see, this song is kind of situated in a liminal space between Gaur Sarang and Yaman. So it's very difficult to pinpoint one particular raga, but you can say that this song follows the Bilawal scale, not the Bilawal rag, but the Bilawal scale, or the Ionian scale from the Western perspective, consisting of major notes with accidental splashes of the Tibromotham, Korima, as we say in Bengali, the Tibromotham, or the F sharp note, if we follow the C major scale. So that brings it perhaps closer to Iman, and then you have kind of twists and turns of Al-Hayya Bilawal. So it's very difficult to say which rag it actually followed. Tagore's composition often deviates from the pathway of an established raga and creates an anomalous yet avant-garde melodic texture, and only a semblance of a particular raga becomes traceable in his song. Because as we know, Tagore redesigned the structure of many ragas. He kind of redesigned Behag, he rediscovered Behag, he rediscovered Khamaj in his song. So it's not always possible to say, okay, this is very this Khamaj is what Nikhil Banerjee or Ravi Shankar played. No, Tagore's Khamaj was a different form of Khamaj. Tagore's Bihag was a different form of Bihag that he used. So the tune of this song, that is of Jana Gana Mana, embodies a devotional quality since it is addressed to a transcendental entity and a nation. And it echoes the other devotional and religious songs written by Tagore that have been compiled under the section Puja in Kitobitang. But despite the devotional component of this song, the fourth stanza of this song brings forth the image of an eternal charioteer, and I will talk about that. And the mood of this song becomes martial. Just within a moment, it becomes martial, from devotional to martial. The fourth stanza goes like this. পতন অভ্যুদয় বন্ধুর পন্থা যুগ যুগ ধাবিত যাত্রী হে চির সারথি তব রথচক্রে মুখরিত পথ দিন রাত্রি দারুণ বিপ্লব মাঝে তব শঙ্খ ধ্বনি বাজে সংকট দুঃখ ত্রাতা. And if you listen, if you are trying to sing this particular section, it will not be sung in a very mellow tone manner, in a very relaxed manner. The entire mood becomes heightened. It should be sung like this. পতন অভ্যুদয় বন্ধুর পন্থা যুগ যুগ ধাবিত যাত্রী হে চির সারথি তব রথ চক্রে মুখরিত পথ দিন রাত্রি দারুণ বিপ্লব মাঝে তব শঙ্খ ধ্বনি বাজে সংকট দুঃখ ত্রাতা দারুণ বিপ্লব মাঝে তব শঙ্খ ধ্বনি বাজে. He Chiro Sharothi. These are references, I think, these are references to Krishna on the battlefield. He was the Sharothi, he was the charioteer. He was the sidekick of Arjun in Mahabharata's Kurukshetra war. And this very idea, you see, Rabindranath is almost replicating the images of Kurukshetra war in this song. So the musical mood dramatically heightens and attains a martial tune. But on the contrary, the tune of Subh Chen, composed by Captain Thakur, embodies the martial spirit throughout the text, throughout the song. It's devotional, but it's not. It does not exude the very, this eulogistic quality, this genuflection that Jana Gana Mana kind of upholds. Since it was the anthem of a provisional government of Azad Hind, which emphasized military rule. And it becomes evident, the military nature of Azad Hind becomes evident in its declaration of war against the United States and the United Kingdom during the Second World War, and its march into the northeastern Indian territories alongside the Japanese Imperial Army during the Yugo offensive of March 1944. This song, however, has a more genteel, more mellowed down version, which remains largely obscure until it was resurrected by the Carnatic vocalist T.M. Krishna and his students on the occasion of the 125th birth anniversary of Subhash Chandra Bose at his ancestral abode in Kolkata on 23rd of January 2022. So if you visit the YouTube channel of Netaji Research Bureau, towards the end of it, it's a very long video. It runs for an hour or so. Towards the end of it, this song has been presented, which was the first version of Subh Sukh Chen, and it does not embody that martial spirit. Subh Sukh Chen has been sung by some singers like Subh Sukh Chen. That is not the way to sing the song. It's martial. I mean, the army, the young blood is singing. So, Subh Sukh Chen ki barakha barse Bharat naam hai jaga. So, this marching spirit must be there. The popular version of Subh Sukh Chen is remarkable for its heightened pace, suggesting a forward march, endorsing a violent struggle for Indian independence. Since the song was approved by Bose, the supreme commander of Azad Hind, for its use as the anthem, an anecdote from his life could be added to bolster my point. Bose's friend, the renowned musicologist Dilip Kumar Rai, in his memoir, Netaji, the Man, Reminiscences, it is also available in Bengali as Amar Bondhu Subhash, discusses Bose's penchant for military nomenclatures. He writes, he was wont to cull his phrases from the military dictionary. This must appear the more significant in the light of subsequent events of his life, when it became more and more obvious that he simply rejoiced fighting against tremendous odds. So Bose's love for the military culture, his inclination towards military nomenclature, and his fighting spirit kind of merge with, kind of melt down. It melts with the spirit of the Azad Hind forces, and it gets reflected in the martial forward marching tune of Subh Sukh Chen. Now, there are two sections left, and I will not take much time. The solar symbol, what do I mean by this? Vivid reference to sun have been made in both Jana Gana Mana and Subh Sukh Chen. And a critical reading of these references might uncover a political dimension to these two songs that both Tagore and Hassan might have inserted. The sun, which is the cardinal center of the solar system, has often been extolled by the Vedic culture of India through the figure of Surya or Aditya, the sun god. Considered the creator of the universe and the source of all life, Surya, who travels across the firmament in his golden chariot driven by Aruna and pulled by 7 horses, is the supreme soul associated with light and warmth. Widely considered a symbol of life and virility, the solar symbol, the sun, the symbol of the sun, and this very phrase, the empire on which the sun never sets, have become inseparable from the empires that spread their colonial tentacles across the world, most notably the British Empire in the 19th and early 20th century. As we know, this very famous phrase, the sun never sets on the British Empire, which means that sun for them is a symbol of colonial exploitation and colonial might. So the sun never set, they say, but it finally, the empire came to an end, it crashed. But this was the perception they had, and sun was the symbol of that mindset. The metaphorical sun of the British Empire symbolized its absolute supremacy over its colonies and the limitless exploitation that entailed it. Moreover, the spirit of Japan. Now let's come to Japan. The spirit of Japan, which is called the Nippon, or the land of the rising sun, is embodied by its rising sun flag. It's there on the screen, consisting of a red disc at the center. Designed in the early Meiji period of Japan, the flag was adopted first as the naval ensign, And though it symbolizes life and bounty of this island nation, it is interpreted by South Korea and China as a metaphor for imperialism and aggressive militarism, as evident from Japanese Pan-Asian expansionist project during the Second World War. We all know about the rape of Nanking and all those terrible incidents that happened. And it has even been equated with the infamous swastika-wearing flag of the Nazi Germany. The Sun iconography, loaded with imperial ambition, has been given a reverse spin by both Tagore and Hassan, which becomes evident by analyzing the texts of these two songs. The concluding paragraph of Jana Gana Mana resonates with the image of a new dawn, with the sun rising on the horizon. রাত্রি প্রভাতিল উদিল রবি ছবি পূর্ব উদয়গিরি ভালে গাহে বিহঙ্গম পুণ্য সমীরণ নবজীবন রস ঢালে তব করুণার অনুরাগে নিদ্রিত ভারত জাগে তব চরণে নত মাথা. These lines signify a new dawn, symbolizing liberation from colonial domination, and the solar image, the image of the sun that Tagore uses over here, subtly functions as a foil to the imperialist symbol of the sun, which is used by the British Empire. The rising sun of a rejuvenated India automatically suggests the decline of the British imperialist sun. So one sun is going down, the other one is rising. And the same solar symbol, hence, exhibits a dichotomous function in two different contexts. It's the same sun, but it has been used in two different ways. For the British Empire, the sun symbolizes its colonial might, its exploitative force, while for India, the sun which Tagore is talking about, it's about the resurgence of a culture, the rise of a liberated civilization. The Indian sun embodies the spirit of individualism, democratic values, liberalism, and harmonious coexistence, which run counter to the imperial policies of colonial expansionism and protracted violence. In a similar fashion, the symbol of the sun has been reinforced by Subh as well in its refrain. Suraj bankar jag par chamke Bharat naam subhaga. Azad Hind, which thrived under the support and influence of the Empire of Japan in order to spearhead its revolutionary activities against the British Raj in India, has often been criticized as a puppet government, and Bose's association with Axis leaders like Adolf Hitler and Hideki Tojo has led to him being branded an Axis collaborator. However, Bose was contemptuous of the Nazis and the idea of imperialism, but he sought the assistance of Axis powers like Nazi Germany and Japan to destabilize the British Empire, because the British Empire was fighting on the Allied side, while Nazi Germany and Japan were on the Axis side. So he followed the diplomatic policy of enemy's enemy is my friend. And following that, he joined hands with Japan. Of course, he has been criticized for this. So the son of Subh never addresses the controversial rising sun symbol of Japan, which stands for the expansionist policy of Japan, merely because of its association with the Axis state. Rather, it borrows the spirit of Japan, the spirit of nationalism of Japan, which was a positive thing. Even Tagore, in his lectures on nationalism, has praised Japan for its nationalistic endeavors. But he criticized the imperial expansionist policies, which Bose also did. Rather, the son of Subh borrows the spirit of the nationalism of Japan, which is represented by the sun, and conflates it with the idea of India rising like a sun above the scenes of destitution and decrepitude rendered by the colonial masters. Like Jana Gana Mana, the son of Subh is essentially anti-imperialist in nature and stands vertically opposite to the Japanese sun, which stands for the principles of expansionism and violence. I have almost reached the finishing line. This is the last slide, and I will end with this. the question of the addressee. To whom have these two songs been addressed? And you will say, of course, they have been addressed to Mother India. But no, I mean, I would like to dig into it. I would like to point out the subtle points that are floating around. The text of Jana Gana Mana, despite being addressed to a transcendental entity, as I've already said, that it describes as Bharat Bhagya Vidhata, or the dispenser of India's destiny, occasionally contains references to the nation as a beloved mother. You will find one line, Dushapne atonke rokha korile onke snehomoyi tumi mata. And these two figures, the transcendental entity and the nation, have been merged together, which makes the identity of the addressee ambiguous. I mean, to whom has the song been dedicated to? I mean, whether it's the god or the transcendental figure or to the nation, this becomes difficult to understand at times. Tagore was a practitioner of the Brahmo faith, which believes in the existence of a supreme and a transcendental being, who is the creator, preserver, destroyer, who is the giver of all good in this world and the next, who is all-knowing, all-pervading, formless, and beneficent. So it is conceivable that this idea might have influenced Tagore to incorporate this transcendental being, or Brahmo, as it is called, in this song, to create the image of a divine providence which decides India's fate and trajectory, who, in Tagore's own words, is the ruler of the minds of all people and dispenser of India's destiny. So Tagore is creating an image of something, of some power or whatever it might be, who is deciding India's trajectory, who is monitoring Indian people and the events from somewhere. I mean, it might be from the lofty heights of heaven or from any other place. The Indian nation, characterized by its geographical and cultural plurality, pays homage to this being, this transcendental being, and extols its supremacy. In Tagore's translation, we know the Bengali, but I'm reading out the English one. Thy name rouses the hearts of Punjab, Sindh, Gujarat, Maratha, of the Dravid and Orissa and Bengal. They pray for thy blessings and sing thy praise. India has often been projected as an insipid, feminine nation, almost like a damsel in distress in many nationalist songs. For example, that very famous song, Tomar bhoy nei ma amra pratibad korte jani. The children are going to save mother from the colonial invaders. So the mother is almost like a damsel in distress, and she kind of needs a knight, an armored knight riding on a horse to save her. This has been the case with many nationalist songs. I don't like that, but this is the image that has been projected by many. Even in Anandamot, I remember, if my memory serves me right, the Shantan Dol, described by Bunkin, they are praising the goddess, and they think it's their holy duty to liberate the motherland from the Muslims, and the Britishers were also coming into the scene. So that was a very important duty that they had to undertake in order to liberate their mother from foreign influences. The transcendental figure, I'm sorry, there's another line. So it's this damsel in distress, it's this feminine nation whose modesty can only be restored by the intervention of a masculine power. The transcendental figure, presumably the almighty Brahma, performs this role of dispensing India's destiny. Its virility and its strength are the prerequisites to save the honor of the nation from foreign marauders. The image of this masculine figure is further reinforced by this line. পতন অভ্যুদয় বন্ধুর পন্থা যুগ যুগ ধাবিত যাত্রী হে চিরসারথী. I've already mentioned this once before. হে চিরসারথী তব রথ চক্রে মুখরিত পথ দিন রাত্রি. As mentioned earlier, this Chiro Sharuthi, or eternal charioteer, is reminiscent of the mythical character Krishna of Mahabharata, who spearheaded the Battle of Kurukshetra, fought between two hostile camps, the Pandavas and the Kauravas. the reference to this divine entity, it's not a direct reference, but we can say it refers to Krishna blowing into his conch shell, Panchajanma. And its merger with the image of the charioteer indubitably creates a figure which is charged with masculine qualities, since Krishna is often considered the most complete and original male. He is the most complete male. We are not. Krishna embodies, and even with the Ram, as we say, Morjada Purushottam, Purusher Moddhe Jini Uttam, who's the alpha male is not the correct word, but I mean the best among men. So, and Krishna, just like that, embodies the best of the masculine qualities. And Holly Walter writes that regardless of that is Krishna's multiple gender transitions and overall transformativeness, he is still fundamentally coded as masculine by most definitions of the term. However, Krishna has a fluid masculinity. He can also shift his position along the gender spectrum. This is paradoxical. I mean, I'm not a specialist in this, but Krishna is very masculine. But even after that, he can change his quality. He can assume feminine qualities as well. And it is observable in this text when in the subsequent paragraphs of Jana Gana Mana, the masculine transcendental figure, the Brahma, the God, or the divine providence, whatever it might have been, is being substituted with the image of India as the mother. But thy mother arms were round her, and thine eyes gazed upon her troubled face in sleepless love through her hours of ghastly dreams. দুঃস্বপ্নে আতঙ্কে রক্ষা করিলে অঙ্কে স্নেহময়ী তুমি মাতা. Till now it was referring to that, Jaya 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 He Jaya Rajeshwara Bharata Bhagya Vidhata and all these things. Suddenly it makes a U-turn and it talks about দুঃস্বপ্নে আতঙ্কে রক্ষা করিলে অঙ্কে স্নেহময়ী তুমি মাতা. This affection, this maternal affection is being talked about. The feminine affection is being talked about. So Tagore is kind of oscillating between this transcendental figure and the mother image of the nation. The idea of masculinity is further reinforced by the reference to the throne, Purava Poshchima Ashe Tava Singhasana Pashe, which is the center of power and authority. It is observable in the Bengali version of the song, but it is not found in the English version. So Purava Poshchima Ashe Tava Singhasana Pashe. Singhasana stands for power and authority, and it has a masculine connotation to it. Well, of course, the British monarch, I mean, Queen Elizabeth was a woman. He sat on the throne. But if you look at it would be wrong to say, it would be incorrect to say that throne always represents masculine qualities. But if you look at the songs of Rabindranath, especially from the Puja Porjay, Maha Singhasane Boshi Shunicho He Vishwapito, Tomari Rochito Chande Mohan Vishwero Gito. So this Maha Singhasan is there, and it is being occupied by Vishwapito, a father-like figure. Shakatore oi kandiche shakole shono shono pita. There's no reference to mata or mother. I mean, there might be references to mother in other songs, but I'm talking more or less, by and large, Rabindranath's God is very masculine. Even in Islam, I've heard that Allah does not have any gender, but when we are going to talk about Allah, we have to talk about him in masculine idioms. So this is what I mean. Masculine is a quality rather than being a man, but masculine is a quality. That's what I'm talking about. So Rabindranath's idea of God or this transcendental figure is more or less, by and large, very masculine. But there's a constant oscillation, as I've already mentioned, between the masculine and the feminine attributes. The constant juggling between the masculine transcendental figure and the feminine nation can lead the readers to assume that Tagore is trying to synthesize masculine and feminine attributes, the transcendental and the local, to create an androgynous identity of this addressee. So Tagore is at the same time addressing, I would argue, both the transcendental figure and the nation, and he's merging these two qualities, these two things to create an androgynous identity of India. The supreme figure and the nation become synonymous in his interpretations, and it becomes immaterial to untether, decouple these two beings. India's character could be symbolized through Krishna once again when he is seen in conjunction with his consort Radha, or Ram with Sita, Siya Ram. Because Krishna is held up as masculine but not man, gendered but fluid, and sexual but not bound by cultural or even biological norms. This fluidity, which is seen in Krishna, is also seen in the body of the nation. It invests the nation with the power to shift its position from that of a beloved, docile, genteel, and caring mother to a belligerent, rebellious, and martial entity. I was talking about Tomar Bhoy Nei Ma Amra Pratibad Korte Jani. This kind of songs have been written. And on the other hand, Mukund Das has also written Bhoy ki morone rakhite santane matongi meteche aaj somoro rongi. The Matongi is probably a figure from, it's called the Tantric Saraswati. But Matongi or Kali, these are very, martial, it embodies martial spirit. So in Mukunda Das's imagination, India, Mother India, is wearing that armored gear. It's ready to exterminate her enemies. And in other imaginations, India is a damsel in distress, very feminine, mother-like nation. But what really characterizes India, as if we study Tagore's song, these two qualities at the same time exist. They are coexisting. They are at the same time existing in the body of India. So I would argue Rabindranath is trying to project India as an androgynous figure. So I've almost reached the concluding portion. With this, I will end this in my talk. Subh Sukh, instead of engaging in this duality, projects India as the mother. There's no reference to any transcendental figure. Rather, the image of the nation occupies the supreme space. In contrast to Jana Gana Mana, where the awakening of India is materialized through the intervention of a divine agency, Tobo Koruna Runorage Nitrito Bharoto Jage. It's almost like a Prince Charming is descending on the heaven, and it's allowing or facilitating this act of, pulling India up from the colonial slumber. We do not find this kind of divine agency, an external agency in Subh Sukh. Subh Sukh does not showcase the involvement of an external agency to rouse the nation from its slumber, which is evident in this line. Subh Sukh ki barkha barse Bharat bhagya hai jaga, as India has awakened. That's it. It echoes the image of plurality and cultural syncretism, which is a cornerstone feature of India, in the same manner as Tagore's song does, albeit with a difference. While Tagore celebrates the glory of India by referring to the majestic throne, Tabo Singhasanopashe, Hassan's interpretation of Subh Sukh uses the image of the lap of the mother nation. It's not only declamorized the image of the throne, but the reference to the mother's lap makes the image more homely, mundane, and benevolent, which is open to all people hailing from different religious and cultural communities. While Rabindranath is writing, Puraba Poshtima Ashe Tabo Singhasan Pashe, Singhasan has it creates a very formidable effect. Like, you're looking at someone who's sitting on a pedestal. It creates this fear and it creates this weird sensation in your brain. Oh, this must be a holier than thou figure. It's not very close to my heart. It's something to be revered. It's something to be preserved. It's very special. But Hassan's version is very interesting. हर सुबह के रहने वाले हर मजहब के प्राणी सब भेद और फर्क मिटा के सब गोद में तेरी आके on the lap सब गोद में तेरी आके गूंथे प्रेम की माला. So he does not need a throne. My mother does not need a throne. Her lap is my throne, and it's this lap, this very this very accessible image, this very homely image is what I want from my mother. I do not want to place her on a throne. I want to celebrate my possession on her lap. Most importantly, Subh hails the nation and wishes it to be victorious in its struggle so that it may shine like the sun over the world. Suraj bankar jag par chamke Bharat naam subhaga. Instead of praising and genuflecting before any transcendental godlike figure which is observed in Tagore's text, it celebrates the integrity and the superiority of the mother herself. It would, however, be incorrect to suggest that this song, by making constant references to the mother image, actually emasculates India. It does not. In Tagore's song, we probably needed an external agency, but in Hassan's literary universe, India is self-sufficient. She can herself rise up from the dust and, fight back, hit back. So finally, what I want to say is that Subh, instead of emasculating, instead of, without diminishing the prowess of India, celebrates a loving bond between the nation and her subjects. So I want to conclude my talk here. I don't know whether I have been able to make sense because I was looking at the clock, whether I was taking time, I was taking up much time. So what I want to end with, this is my reading. This is how I have been able to situate these two texts through a comparative reading. And with Vande Mataram, I have to address this before I end. It is not wrong, it's not incorrect to uphold my civilizational culture. Durga, Lokhi, Saraswati do not mean that they are goddesses, they are attributes, they're qualities, and that's what Bankim Chandra had celebrated. But many people might not have found it to be more acceptable. I mean, if you look at the Muslims of Indonesia, they've accepted the Hindu culture of their land. But unfortunately, there are many Indian Muslims have accepted the Hindu culture of India. Hindu or Bharatiya, whatever it might be. These are very loaded words. But there are some people who think that these explicit references might run counter to their religious beliefs. It violates the principle of Tawheed, or the oneness of God. So for that, an open architecture had to be designed so that everyone could be accommodated, so that everyone could sing together and celebrate the glory of the motherland. So without explicitly referring to any icons or any symbols, Tagore and Hassan have been able to create a song, or songs rather, two songs, which are connected with the civilizational integrity of India, yet it offers an open architecture where everyone can come and interpret as they wish. So this is what, to me, is the image of a secular, pluralistic, and syncretic India. This openness has been very aptly captured. This pluralistic culture has very aptly been captured by the sense of these two songs. Thank you very much. খোদায় বন্ধুর পন্থা যুগ যুগ ধাবিত যাত্রী হে চির সারথি তব রথ চক্রে মুখরিত পথ দিন রাত্রি দারুণ বিপ্লব মাঝে তব শঙ্খ ধ্বনি বাজে সংকট দুঃখ ত্রাতা